Commissioner, can you believe we're actually doing this now? We're actually getting it done.
We're good to go. We're good to go.
So much we hear about sport these days and about the future of sport and media and delivery is about technology. And sometimes it just lets us down. And it did today, but just a short rain delay. We appreciate you sticking with us and sticking through it. I'm going to let my two fine colleagues drive this bus with you, but I just wanted to say thank you for taking the time and sticking with us.
You're welcome, Scott. Happy to do it. And, before we start, I just want to say, you guys have gotten technology to one side. Everybody has technology problems. You guys have gotten off to a great start with your business. And, I congratulate you. It's really, it's nice to see an additional entrant into this space. I think it's good for our business, and congratulations to you on that.
Thank you very much. I owe it to the staff. They do a great job. Take it away, boys.
Well, talking about great businesses, Commissioner Manfred, we'd like to start off with your reaction to the top line numbers in our report. The average franchise we have valued at $2.2 billion. That's billion with a B. $66 billion in aggregate. The Yankees are first in all of sports, as we were talking to Randy Levine about a little bit earlier, at a $6.75 billion fair market valuation. Several years ago, these would have seemed astronomical, these numbers. Now they're very much, at least we think, in reality. But what's your response?
Well, look, I think it's testimony to the strength and value of our game, the content we create, the technology platforms that we've developed in order to serve our fans. I mean, it is true. When, the Dodgers sold to the current ownership group, there was chatter about it having a $2 billion price tag on it, and people just didn't believe it. But the fact of the matter is we have 30 extraordinary franchises, and I think the valuations reflect that fact.
So on our Sportico Live in January about the NBA, we had Commissioner Silver on, and his answer got a lot of attention to the following question. So I'd be remiss not to ask you as well. Is about expansion fees. So were MLB to expand, I know it might not be on the radar immediately, but how much would it cost would-be owners to buy in? Any sense you could give us?
Well, look, I think that the best sense that I can give you is your own numbers, right? I mean, if in fact these assets are worth on average $2.2 billion, I think that's kind of a lodestar in terms of where you would start in terms of valuing an expansion opportunity. I think you also need to remember, and I did watch that interview. I think Adam made this point. Expansion is not purely additive, right? From the perspective of the existing owners, there are huge shared revenue streams that are diluted as a result of having 32 as opposed to 30 as your denominator. And if that was in fact the expansion number, and that has to be taken into account as well.
As we've seen these valuations go up and the price tags for LP stakes go up, and we've heard a lot about SPACs and private equity getting into it. Either for LP stakes or for control stakes. And I guess, are you expecting to see that in 2021 for any teams?
Well, we were kind of the first league to move on these sports investment funds by allowing a fund to own with controls, really strict controls, small stakes in more than one club. And I think that's reflective of where we are in terms of valuations. The capital stack, you have to be a little more creative to support the kind of valuations that we have out there. I think that private equity in minority stakes is another positive development for us. I mean, the Fenway transaction, I think, is a good example of that. Again, looking for new sources of capital, given the commitment of capital required to own a major league franchise. SPACs are an interesting one for us. I think that we have a rule that prevents public ownership right now. And I think the need for control by the SPAC is something that is difficult. I didn't say impossible. I said difficult to rationalize with our governance rules as they exist today. But I think the most important point is I believe baseball has to continue to evolve on these ownership rules in order to deal with the reality that our franchises are worth an extraordinary amount of money, and it's very difficult to rely just on individual wealth and bank loans to support your capital stack.
So you guys would consider potentially changing those rules and regulations if a SPAC came out?
We have a great ownership committee led by John Middleton that has done a nice job of trying to stay ahead of developments in this area and has ongoing conversations about a variety of different ownership structures.
So Scott just outed me a moment ago as he was introducing you as our resident baseball history nut, mentioning my book. So I ask this as Sportico's baseball history nut because far more than any other sport, baseball draws upon its tradition. So I'm wondering, at what point in your mind do any rule changes disrupt that to where they would cause more harm than good? Essentially, where's the tipping point in that?
Yeah, look, I think that's one of the real challenges in terms of managing change in the game. I would say a couple of things. First of all, if you look at our experience, there's a very, very discernible pattern with respect to rule changes. You announce the rule changes. Lots and lots of people write stories saying Rob Manfred doesn't love the game. This rule change is crazy. The rule change then goes into effect. People see it. They have an opportunity to touch it. And they realize that, gee whiz, maybe this is a good thing after all. So that dynamic does complicate the process of driving change. Secondly, I think it's always important to realize the game is not static, right? The game changes organically. So I don't think about it in the context of, how should we change the game? I think about it in the context of how should we manage the change that has been going on, maybe not adequately managed over the last decade or so.
Well, speaking of changes to the game off the field, I want to just touch on sports betting because the people we talked to when we were doing the MLB valuations, they brought up the idea of baseball with slower pace is actually beneficial because it allows in-game betting, where if you look at stats in the UK, a lot of the betting happens certainly with soccer, global football, and baseball with the delay between pitches enables that. So how do you guys navigate that right now where you've got different rules in different states, and it's a tricky balance how you incorporate it into the game right now?
Yeah, look, we have moved with the NBA and the PGA Tour and the NHL kind of on these betting, sports betting issues. From the beginning, we favored the idea of federal legislation, given that we're a national product. Obviously, uniform legislation throughout would be great for us. Having said that, the states have evolved in kind of a very rational manner. There are going to be differences among our clubs in terms of the timing of their opportunities, the exact scope of those opportunities. But those are smaller issues. I think the biggest issue is that sports betting is a massive opportunity for fan engagement. I'll tell you a funny story. I don't think you would mind. One night I was coming back from an event and phone rang, was Adam Silver, and we were talking about something. He said, Rob, you got to stop talking about, the pace of game. He says, because your pace of game is going to be absolutely perfect for sports betting. And he's right. I mean, it usually is. And he was right about that one. So we do see it as an opportunity to make everything we do, our broadcasts, all forms of fan engagement, better for our fans, for those who are interested in it, fill in the gaps in the game, provide another opportunity for entertainment that our fans clearly want.
Switching gears just a little bit, Rob, earlier in our program, I was talking to Randy Levine about how the RSN business has been changing. And I quoted one of the bidders during the Mets process who we talked to at Sportico, calling it a melting glacier. He pushed back about that. I prefaced it by saying that yes is insulated some from this, given the market size. But I'm wondering, given that Major League Baseball was so far out in front, not just of sports leagues, but businesses in general, in terms of advanced media and streaming to begin with, given that streaming is growing, cord cutting is increasing, traditional cable sources of revenue are having more difficulties. What can teams invested in RSNs, these are almost half the teams in the league, do in the face of continued cord cutting, and how will streaming ultimately be integrated on a team level into this equation?
Well, I think it's important to start with the proposition that there is some core, I think most people believe there's some core of the cable model that's gonna survive. And so I think that that model has been really good to baseball, really good to our teams. And I think that any strategy has to begin from the proposition that we should do everything possible to continue to support that core model. Whether, however, pick your number of homes that it's going to melt down to. I mean, you see different numbers, but whatever the number is, what's left there has true economic value. And I think the teams in Major League Baseball should do everything we can to support that cable model. Secondly, I think the notion of cannibalization is probably not a good one. In other words, years ago, people talked about, if you make a streaming alternative available, it's going to accelerate or exacerbate what's going on in terms of cord cutting. My own view on that is people make a decision to be in the cable model or out of it based on fundamentals that are bigger than baseball or any individual sport or probably any individual type of entertainment. If you accept that premise, then I think the strategy becomes, okay, we want to preserve for the folks that are remaining in the cable bundle because there's real economics there. But we need to find a way in conjunction with our RSN partners and cable partners to reach that other audience that has opted out for more fundamental reasons and deliver our games to those people who are now outside the bundle.
I wanted to just touch on the labor issue, and Scott Boras brought it up, and you guys have said, and the union said as well, we're not looking to negotiate in the press at all, and I'm not looking for you to go through the points between you. But I guess in light over the last 14, 15 months, where there seems to be a lot of conflict between the union and ownership, I guess if you can, for baseball fans, give them a little bit of optimism that they're going to have a baseball season come April 1st in 2022.
I've spent the vast majority of my career involved in labor relations. I think that the very nature of labor relations, it's kind of ups and downs, right? You're going to have periods of time where, conflict, you don't see eye to eye. The trick is getting past those areas of conflict and finding a way to make an agreement, to find common ground. Since I've been at baseball, we've had a pretty good track record on that. We've never had a dispute. And I believe, I really am optimistic that the process will work here. We're committed to the process. We're open-minded. We're optimistic. We want to make an agreement, and those should be good sentiments for all baseball fans to hear.
And just sliding from labor to a different area of law, antitrust. Some members of Congress are looking at baseball's antitrust exemption. Now, to our viewers, I think it's important to clarify what this is because much of it was repealed in 1998 with the Curt Flood Act. important exemptions remain related to what's called the business of baseball, which includes the status of the minor leagues, umpires, franchise relocation. Basically, to button it all up, I'm wondering, Commissioner Manfred, is this look at Congress a cause for concern? Is it just political maturations? Is it somewhere in between? Wondering what you can insight you can bring about this.
Well, look, I think that the sponsors of the bill would have to tell you, what their intentions are. We believe that the antitrust exemption continues to perform an important role in baseball. We think that we have utilized the exemption in a very judicious way over a very, very long period of time. And I don't see any direct connection between the antitrust exemption and, any issue that might have been hot this particular spring, suggesting to me that the substance will out, that there's nothing that's changed and that the exemption should continue.
Well, this has become a political football, and this was raised in Congress after you guys moved the All-Star game. You guys put out a statement. Can you expand at all about the movement of the game from Atlanta to Colorado?
Look, I think that from baseball's perspective, we were injected into a very politicized situation. I think we did the right thing. And I think it's important to realize that part of that calculation as to what was right was purely business. We thought our players were going to be in an extraordinarily difficult situation given how politically charged it was. And we think the decision we made will actually be player protective. I can't really expand on it beyond that.
I often use my son as a focus group of one. Curious for your take on an 11-year-old who plays baseball. And I could be saying this to Roger Goodell, to Gary Bettman, or to Adam Silver. He will not sit on that couch for 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours to watch a sporting event. I did not say a baseball game, a sporting event.
Right.
How will you make my kid care when he does love his Xbox? And I was watching him this morning. He's playing some minor league game where you have to work your way to the majors. So he knows the players. You have a line into him. How will you make him a baseball fan?
Yeah, you need to. I think the trick on the media side, and I want to come back to the non-media side in just a minute, but I think on the media side is you need to be where young people are on the platforms that they want to engage on. I think MLB.TV is a great example of it. People talk about our older audience. The fact of the matter is our MLB.TV audience averages 44 years of age. That's because we are delivering a product on a platform that age group wants to see. That product continues to grow. We're up 44% since 2019 and 12% off last year in terms of the number of minutes consumed. And I think this next generation, that was kind of the last generation challenge, right? I think the next generation is going to be its own challenge in terms of identifying those platforms that have durability, bringing the game to young people on those platforms, and doing it in a way that allows us to monetize the delivery of the content, consonant with kind of what we're used to in terms of media revenue streams. And that's a challenge. It sounds easy. It's not as easy as it sounds. I think the second half of it is where you started, Scott. Fandom's about participation as a youth. And, it's why we've been so big on getting kids playing generally, providing playing opportunities in underserved communities in order to promote diversity in our fan base. And, I have to say one of the sort of great benefits of the sort of COVID period, if you leave it to me, has been the emergence of the Players Alliance in this space as a partner in terms of making sure that we're giving kids an opportunity to play the game everywhere.
Wait, you mentioned COVID. Do you have any idea? I had my second shot this morning, feeling okay right now. You have any idea what percentage of baseball players are fully vaccinated at this point?
Yeah, I think that I think we're around 70%. The clubs have worked really hard with their players. I think the incentives built in terms of softening our protocols are stiff. I mean, they are really, really tough, and they need to be tough absent vaccination. But I think those incentives have served us well. And, we're continuing to press to try to get everybody up above that kind of 85 number that we think is so important.
And I'm going to let you go on this one, Rob. And I think like the COVID piece is important because you're moving towards a fourth season. You're talking bubbles, and I know you just want to get there. But looking ahead with baseball, and I go to my kid. What partnerships help you out? We're talking about monetization. We're talking about growth as franchise value. How do you create the value? Are the partnerships just as important? If you can't do it yourself, who can pull you across that finish line? How do you get there?
Yeah, look, I think in terms of growing the game, we are really fortunate in terms of the partners that we have. Let me name just three, okay? And I hesitate to do this because by exclusion, I'm going to leave out some really important people. But, our partnership with Google on the technology side, I mean, it's how can you ask for more than that in terms of assistance in developing the kind of products that keep young people engaged? They've been a phenomenal partner to us. Secondly, Nike. People always talk about the marketing of our game, and I think that a major step forward for us is the partnership with Nike. I mean, when you work with them on marketing the game, I'll give you a great example. The City Select jerseys, the ones that just debuted in Boston, I mean, they convinced a traditional ownership group to do something really different, and it was a huge commercial success. They sold out locally. We did $1 million in a day online. Absolutely phenomenal. And that outside influence, that expertise, huge for us. And then the last one I would mention is Fanatics. I mean, in the whole COVID period, our merchandise sales went up. Despite the fact that we were down for a while, played only 60 games, that, there was all sorts of economic problems for people around the country. When a partner like Fanatics delivers that kind of performance, you got the right partner. So those are, but you know what? We have a whole stable of them. I just picked those three because I do believe that those partnerships are crucial, not just with those three, but with our partners in general to the growth of the game going forward.
Okay, I lied. One quickie to get you out, and I do mean this will be it. Of course, we all saw what happened with the European Soccer Super League. One of your owners put out a video apology. If there was a two-all memo, two owners from the commissioner of baseball who looks out for the game, mm-hmm. What would that two-all memo say? What's the lesson learned of what we saw with the Super League? Well,
look, I think that that it is important for us as a league always to remember all 30 of us count. We all know that, you get a bump when certain very large, iconic franchises do well, but you need all 30. And the second thing is all 30 of those franchises have fans. And it's about those fans at the end of the day, what they want to consume. And that's always what should guide and drive our business.
All right, Rob, the commissioner of baseball, thank you so much. We do appreciate you taking the time and sticking with us through that technological rain delay. Thank you so much.
Listen, it was great. I appreciate you guys including me, and I'm sure I'll talk to all of you again soon, okay?
Yeah, I'll visit you in office soon. Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, well, Kurt and Peter, you know how this goes. Thanks, guys, for really some great conversation. We do have a taped conversation with our colleague Barry Bloom, with the head of the Players Association, Tony Clark. We're going to save that because of the delay. We're going to save that for our YouTube page. So anybody who's looking on and had hoped to see the Tony Clark conversation with Barry Bloom, I will encourage you to go visit our YouTube page to get a piece of that discussion. Good stuff from Barry and Tony. I will say also our next Sportico Live event, May 6th, we focus on the power of women in sports. 2-day event, but because we think that topic certainly deserves it. So thanks so much for tuning in for our baseball discussion. Peter, Kurt, thanks for a great job done.
Thanks, Scott. I will wrap up with one point. You never have to apologize to Commissioner Manfred for asking an additional question, because when you come in from the bullpen, there is a 3-question minimum requirement.
There we go. So I utilized all 3. That's good. Thanks so much, guys,
everyone.
and thanks for watching.